Amidst the usual minefield of Christmas lunch with the in-laws and extended family, there's an additional pothole to avoid this year: the constitutional reform that dares not speak its name. If you're concerned about ructions in the household over the ensuing festive days, then I offer you the following advice. Number 1, skip the Brussels sprouts. The title alone proving contentious this Christmas. Belgian chocolates are probably worth it, but why risk family relations for the sake of this gassy Christmas perennial? Number 2, peel off the wine labels, or buy exclusively New World. This, of course, has the added benefit of allowing you to serve your cheapest grot to your guests. Number 3, prepare a seating plan. We recommend graduating the diners on a spectrum of Europhile to Europhobe and arranging them on a single side of the table so the two ends need never have the chance of talking to one another. It'll look a bit like the Last Supper, which it may well be in the event that the B word is uttered. If conversation does swing round to Brexit, then I can offer only one suggestion, which is to insert something even more nuclear into the mix. Perhaps something about the birth of Jesus Christ. The Christmas story is, after all, just as politically inflammatory as anything that's taken place in our nation over the last 2 years. The festival itself is rooted in the Roman winter solstice via the Germanic pagan rituals of Yuletide, co-opted to celebrate the birth of a Palestinian Jew. The narrative itself is a story of migration, full of shifts and movement. The Magi from the east, at least they were highly skilled immigrants, although they show a distinct lack of respect to government officials. The shepherds from their fields, coming to the city reeking with the smell of sheep and the sweat of their hurried journey, is a story of unexpected hospitality, as the innkeeper offers to Mary a better-than-nothing birthing chamber. It's a story of homelessness. Jesus was born in exile, his mother having migrated from Galilee to Judea at the decree of the Roman emperor. It's a story of threat and violence. Jesus became a refugee after his birth, fleeing to Egypt to escape the violence of a tyrannical ruler. And this is the conflict at the heart of the story that drives the narrative forward. The powerless set against the powerful, the shot callers against those that follow orders. And in the midst of all of this, a baby born to upset the ways of the world, to turn on its head the established sinful order. The Christmas stories that we read in the Gospels of Matthew and Luke, in the prologue to John's Gospel that we heard tonight, they set themselves in opposition to the idea of Pax Romana, the Roman peace. They assert boldly, dangerously, clearly that it's not Caesar Augustus who is the Prince of Peace and the Lord of Lords, but rather it is Jesus, the Christ. Not peace through force and oppression and the destitution and the depredation of the people, but rather peace through freedom, through equality and justice, through respect for the dignity and the value of each human being. These are the two alternatives that the Christmas event places before us. On the one hand, the Pax Romana maintained by the militant force of law, the threat of punishment and obedience to earthly power. And on the other hand, Pax Christi, the peace of Christ, that rejects violence and threat, that promises to turn the world upside down, casting prideful leaders to the ground and raising up the poor and the lowly. If you want something that will really turn heads at the Christmas table in Kensington, then forget about Brexit and tell the story of Christmas, of a reordering of the world, where the first become last and the last first, where the rich are sent away empty and where the poor eat their fill. And as his disciples, we're called to emulate Christ and to take our place in bringing about this kingdom. We're called upon to reject the violent ways of the world, its self-centeredness, its inequality of power and wealth. We're called upon to speak and to act for justice and righteousness out of self-giving love and for the benefit of our neighbour. And it might just be that your neighbour thinks that we should take back control, whilst you think that things were ticking along just fine. Or it might just be that your neighbour is leading the campaign for the people's vote, whilst you can't wait for the termination of the European Union's common fisheries policy. But nevertheless, they are your neighbours. You're called to love, and you're called to act for their benefit. And if that all sounds a bit hard, then fear not, because Christians have been attempting it and often failing at it, loving their neighbour, for plenty of years now, so you'll be in good company, but you do have to try. Maybe you're one of the people sitting here tonight who at this stage can't bring yourself to care anymore one way or the other. Well, the good news for you is that you're quite in tune with John. What John reminds us of in his prologue is the longer view. That the Roman Empire rose and it fell, and it will eventually be forgotten. That Brexit just around the corner will too fade, and as hard as it might be to believe, it will one day be forgotten too. But God's kingdom will never fail. So amidst the political excitement of our nation and the wounds caused as neighbour has set themselves against neighbour, if you step back and you shut your ears to the loudest shouting voices and you look carefully, you will glimpse this night the healing of the nations and a better way to live as you witness the birth of the babe at Bethlehem. Amen.